Okay, so then what we need to do is count everybody's vote by hand. And after that, we're going to go over the votes again manually, and then...
Oh, stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Look, kids, we're all in this kindergarten class together. We have to respect one another, else we're in for a terrible school year.
Here's the gist of it. For decades, physicists believed that the tiniest bits inside an atom were point particles. Flying around the outside were the electrons, and inside were protons and neutrons, which were made up of quarks. But string theory says that what we thought were indivisible particles are actually tiny vibrating strings.
It's nothing really mystical. It's a really tiny string. It either closes into its little circle or it has endpoints, but it's just a little string.
In the 1980s, the idea caught on, and people started jumping on the string bandwagon.
Well, the fact that suddenly all these other people were working in the field had its advantages and its disadvantages. It was wonderful to see how rapidly the subject could develop now because so many people were working on it.
One of the great attractions of strings is their versatility. Just as the strings on a cello can vibrate at different frequencies, making all the individual musical notes, in the same way, the tiny strings of string theory vibrate and dance in different patterns, creating all the fundamental particles of nature. If this view is right, then put them all together, and we get the grand and beautiful symphony that is our universe. What's really exciting about this is that it offers an amazing possibility. If we could only master the rhythms of strings, then we'd stand a good chance of explaining all the matter and all the forces of nature, from the tiniest subatomic particles to the galaxies of outer space. This is the potential of string theory, to be a unified theory of everything. But at first sight, in our enthusiasm for this idea, we seem to have gone too far. Because we didn't produce just one string theory, or even two. We somehow managed to come up with 5.
5 different string theories, each competing for the title of the theory of everything.
And if there's going to be the fundamental theory of nature, there ought to be one of them.
I suppose a number of string theorists thought, oh, that's fantastic, that's wonderful, and maybe one of these will end up being the right theory of the world. And yet there must have been a little nagging voice at the back of their head that said, well, why are there 5?
With 5 competing players, the stage of string theory was looking a little crowded. The 5 theories had many things in common. For example, they all involved vibrating strings, but their mathematical details appeared to be quite different. Frankly, it was embarrassing. How could this unified theory of everything come in 5 different flavors? This was a case where more was definitely less. But then, something remarkable happened. This is Ed Witten. He's widely regarded as one of the world's greatest living physicists. Perhaps even Einstein. One way is to go to the movies. We're all familiar with the real world having 3 spatial dimensions. That is, anywhere I go, I can move left, right, back, forth, or up, down.
But in the movies, things are a bit different. Even though the characters on a movie screen look three-dimensional, they actually are stuck in just two dimensions. There is no back fourth on a movie screen. That's just an optical illusion. To really move in the back fourth dimension, I'd have to step out of the screen. And sometimes moving into a higher dimension can be a useful thing to do. So, dimensions all have to do with the independent directions in which you can move. They're sometimes called degrees of freedom. The more dimensions or degrees of freedom you have, the more you can do. That's right. And if there really are 11 dimensions, then strings can do a lot more too.
People found fairly soon that there were objects that lived in these theories which weren't just strings, but were larger than that. They actually looked like membranes or surfaces.
The extra dimension Witten added allows a string to stretch into something like a membrane, or a brain for short. A brain could be three-dimensional, or even more. And with enough energy, a brain could grow to an enormous size. Perhaps even as large as a universe. This was a revolution in string theory.
String theory has gotten much more baroque. I mean, now there are not only strings, there are membranes. People go on calling it string theory, but the string theorists are not sure it really is a theory of strings anymore.
The existence of giant membranes and extra dimensions would open up a startling new possibility. That our whole universe is living on a membrane inside a much larger, higher dimensional space. It's almost as if we were living inside a loaf of bread. Our universe might be like a slice of bread, just one slice, in a much larger loaf that physicists sometimes call the bulk. And if these ideas are right, the bulk may have other slices, other universes, that are right next to ours, in effect, parallel universes. Not only would our universe be nothing special, but we could have a lot of neighbors.
Some of them could resemble our universe. They might have matter and planets and, who knows, maybe even beings of a sort. Others could certainly be a lot stranger. They might be ruled by completely different laws of physics. Now, all of these other universes would exist within the extra dimensions of M-theory, dimensions that are all around us. Some even say they might be right next to us, less than a millimeter away. But if that's true, why can't I see them or touch them?
If you have a brain living in a higher dimensional space and your particles, your atoms, cannot get off the brain, it's like trying to reach out, but you can't touch anything. It might as well be on the other end of the universe.
And it's a very powerful idea, because if it's right, it means that our whole picture of the universe is clouded by the fact that we're trapped on just a tiny slice of the higher dimensional universe.
It is a powerful idea, especially because it may help solve one of the great mysteries of modern science.
We're just making sure that the kids who voted for my nephew don't get cheated.
Half the kids in the class didn't vote for your nephew, so what about them? You don't give a crap about them because they're not on your side. People like you preach tolerance and open-mindedness all the time, but when it comes to middle America, you think we're all evil and stupid country yokels who need your political enlightenment. Well, just because you're on TV doesn't mean you know crap about the government. Now get your ass back on first class and respect this class's right to make up their own minds.